different kind of view of life. I started off as a painter. I went to Pratt. I did a lot of printmaking there. I mostly did paintings. They were the photographs, if you may recall, the first photographs from space were done in a mosaic fashion. So they would take them, and that's the way I did these. They were very abstract watercolors, but I would feature the landscape in the watercolors very abstractly. And it just blew my mind that they were taken like somebody was standing there. And this is way before anybody landed on the moon and everything. So the idea of the right angle of the person on the horizontal angle of a planet, such as, or a moon, that was very fascinating to me. So I went through a whole period of time where I did a lot of right angle things. So going from the views of space, I kind of went into a lot of doing spiritual, like very basic symbols like mandalas. And I've done a lot of mandalas. I used to do tons of them with my students in the high school where I work, and everyone loves a mandala. My only problem with them now are these coloring books. Just I feel like I want to beat on and stomp on them because they're so easy to do a mandala and it's such an experience. But anyway, so these like basic symbols, you know, psychological symbols, but always with that right angle. So of course it will surprise no one that my favorite artist is Agnes Martin. And I'm very drawn to minimal art, very, very simple art. Well, simple in that case, but so I wanted to do something with these vintage fabrics and vintage buttons and pins that was approaching a minimal aesthetic. Because I've always collected these things, I've always loved old things, and I love the femininity of them, but I prevented myself from using it because I didn't feel it was serious. Because growing up, my experience with art was a very macho kind of expressive art, so I kind of tamped that down in my psyche. But this, I mean, it took a long time. I've been painting for 50 years, but I finally found what I really am comfortable using, and I developed the skills from painting with the fabrics. So most of the paintings on canvas are done with acrylics, but many of them have very many layers of various mulberry papers and drawn work, which is where you take threads out of the fabric, and then you have a lighter line in there. There's also stitchery on them. So with those are done in acrylics, and they're kind of fused together in layers. And I use also these are little napkins that were used to be used as cocktail napkins back in the day. But there's absolutely gorgeous embroidery on them. So I like to make sure that those works of art that were created by all these anonymous women for centuries have a place of honor. And this is like handmade lace and the pins. I love my pins because, first of all, I kind of was using a lot of buttons, but it got a little precious, I have to admit. So I wanted to do something that was simpler, but I like the metallic. I also like the metallic look of the contrast with the cotton and the metal of the pins. But also, there are lots of different kinds of pins. So you have a really good choice of doing the red pins or the matte pins. I love those matte pins. And safety pins. And they're cheap. So I can use a lot of them. Right. So in using the fabrics, they come from people, a lot of times they come from people who give me them. It's like, this is perfect for you. I never say no. So this was a christening shift that was given to me, just one part of it. And then these are all pins in here and bindings and different things. And this, fortunately, was very heavy. It rusted a little bit. It rusted a little bit, so I really liked it. And these are handkerchiefs, actually, but also applied thread with the acrylics. And again, the grid. And I like the way the thread, sometimes I just take the thread and lay it on the wet acrylic and it becomes a line. So of course it led to more line work with the stitchery, and all of this stitchery is done by hand. And what I do is, you really have to, you can't do it just on the raw fabric. I have to use like an ink pen, but then it just washes out. So that's how that's done. And this is my collection of black buttons. And the top, the wire, I always like to use an older thing. The wire is like a part of a garden fence. So both of those have the wire structure, armature, I guess. And they're just, these are just pinned together. I figured at this point, you know, they look good. These are men's handkerchiefs underneath. And my pal and helper here found a couple of them in Germany, these I believe. And so I stitched those on, and then when I was in Ireland this past year, I found these. So grid-orama here, and then this is organza. This is organza, which I really like using that. And sometimes I use silk flowers and silk leaves. And somebody gave me this. This is a beautiful piece of old silk that their mother had. I mean, there's stories behind all of these fabrics. And these are silk leaves that I found in an antique shop. And that is a upside down planter. And this is silk. And these are all old either beads or glass buttons. This looks really nice, like when you have natural light coming from behind it. And then the little grids there. And this was a corner shelving. And this I stiffened it a little bit. I like it because you can see where I did the drawn work. It's a little bit different approach. I always like to have the extra hanging. I've been collecting the white on white handkerchiefs for a long time, and I did this in Ireland. A couple of these are from Ireland as well. So it was kind of like a really neat thing because I found out that I did indeed come from Ireland. I didn't know, I mean, my background. And I kind of found myself there, and I was very comfortable there. And here I was using like an Irish cotton. So that's about it. I just love doing this. I listen to books a lot. And it's sort of, it's very dissonant though. I like murder mysteries. So I said, you may see me, you know, doing these mandalas, but inside here I'm listening to Tana French, you know, so it's funny. But sometimes I listen to music. But it's hours of sitting and being focused and more intimate. Not the grandiose universe of the watercolors or even the psychological symbols. It's just like very, very simple handwork. Yes?
I just had a comment because you were talking about minimalism, and I knew that you had painted before, and I just think it's, you talked a little bit about the machismo kind of atmosphere, but like for those who might not know, specifically with minimalism, if you take an American art class, they usually will it's all white males that are studying, and the art specifically is just removing the human touch. It's all anonymous, but yet it's not.
Well, it's very conceptual
Yeah,
in a
and
way.
females
Yeah.
weren't getting recognized, so you have this take on it. It's like you are reclaiming it, and you're attaching the female's role to that art history aspect. And
Yes, I think so.
yeah, I can appreciate that.
Thank you very much. That's a great compliment. Well, even if you look at Agnes Martin's large paintings and the line that she's drawing with that pencil, which the mind boggles, but even that looks like a bunch of stitches because she keeps the canvas texture on it in a lot of times. So, and I want to thank you too for the lighting because it really made my life wonderful to see it all lit up like this. And I have a very small studio, so even just to have this in this space is a real honor, and I really am very grateful to 61 for that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Was there a question? Any questions?
How long were you working on this body of work?
2.5 years about, yeah. They take forever.